This is the new 2021 BMW M4 Competition, and yes, it's here, over 500 horsepower in a BMW M4. And today, I'm going to review the most hotly anticipated model in BMW's lineup. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my new enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era. We've had some great sales recently on Cars and Bids, including this manual Porsche Cayenne, which sold for over $32,000. This beautiful Jaguar F-Type R Coupe with tremendously low miles sold for $51,000. And this gorgeous silver over red Mercedes SL55 AMG, which sold for just over $25,000 after dozens of bids. If you're looking to sell your cool car, Cars and Bids is the place. And if you're looking to buy a cool car from the modern era, the 1980s and up, check out Cars and Bids daily auctions and amazing variety only at carsandbids.com. I've borrowed this M4 Competition from CREVIER BMW here in Orange County in Southern California. CREVIER BMW is the largest BMW dealership in North America. They have every BMW you could possibly want, including some of the very first new M3 and M4 models in the country right now. Check out CREVIER BMW by clicking the link in the description below. So let's talk M4 Competition. Now, I recently reviewed the new BMW M3 on my main Doug DeMuro channel, but that was a base model with a manual transmission. This is an M4 Competition with extra power, 503 horsepower in this car, and this has an automatic transmission for more speed, but maybe less pure driving enjoyment. So let's check it out. First, I'm going to take you on a short tour of the M4 Competition. I'm not going to show you all the quirks and features since I've already reviewed the new M3 on my main channel, but I'll show you a few of the most important things. Then I'm going to get it out on the road and drive it, and then I'll give the M4 Competition a Doug score. Alright, now since I already reviewed the new BMW M3 on my main channel, this video is primarily going to be devoted to the differences between the new M4 Competition and the new M3. And the most noticeable difference is under here. This just has more power. 503 horsepower, 479 pound-feet of torque, about 30 more horsepower than the regular M3, and about 75 more pound-feet of torque. Those are pretty hefty numbers. The result is 0 to 60 in the high 3-second range for this car versus low 4-second range for the standard M3 and the standard M4. Now, that's not the only major mechanical difference between the base model and the Competition. The other is drivetrain. The base model M3 and M4 will only offer rear-wheel drive, but the Competition versions will also offer optional all-wheel drive for enhanced traction. It will be rear biased, and of course you can still get rear-wheel drive like this car has. Next up, some notable differences between the Competition and the regular models on the outside. One big one is black trim. You can see black trim around the windows on the Competition. You also have black wheels on the Competition and black trim on the exhaust. BMW calls this shadow line trim. I personally prefer the word black, but either way, black trim helps distinguish the Competition from the standard models. And of course, badging. You have M4 Competition badges on the outside. On the trunk, you have M4 Competition. Same deal on the front fenders, M4 Competition instead of your regular M4 badge. Now, unfortunately, getting the Competition doesn't change the grille at all. It's still your same massive new grille that you have on the M3, the M4, all of these models. It is, well, it's quite large. Not much else you can say. But at least the M4 Competition's massive grille has an M4 Competition badge in it, so you can feel a little bit better about your massive grille compared to the massive grille in the regular M4 and in the standard 4 Series. You have the Competition massive grille. Next up, we move inside the M4 Competition, where the biggest difference between the Competition and the regular car is right here, the gear lever, because all of the Competition models will be automatic transmissions, whereas all of the base models are manuals, meaning that if you want a new M3 or M4, but you want an automatic transmission, you have to step up to the Competition. There's no base model available with an automatic, and that also means if you want a manual transmission, you can only get a base model. You can't get a Competition transmission with a manual. That's just the way they decided to do it. Now, as for the changes in here, on the gear lever itself, you have M imprinted onto it, and you have these nice little M colors stitched around the sides, which I think looks pretty good. You also have this little switch on the gear lever. You can push up or down, and that like affects your transmission shifting speed. If you want it to be quick and maybe a little uncomfortable, or a little slower but a little more comfortable, you can choose that right on the gear lever. Now, two more changes to this center console area. One, because the automatic transmission lever is smaller than the manual, the controller for the infotainment system is able to move up a little bit more, and frankly, it's in a slightly more convenient place if you get the automatic transmission. It's a little bit more easily reachable with your arm on this center console armrest versus being pulled back a little further in models with a manual transmission. But when this controller is moved forward, you have a little extra space in the rear part of this center console, and so you have an M4 Competition logo here. The regular models with the manual transmission have no logo since the infotainment controller is occupying this space. Minor, but quirky. Now, going along with the automatic transmission, another change to the competition models over the regular is the steering wheel, which now has shift paddles, and they are cool. You have these carbon fiber shift paddles, which just look awesome, and little red accents with the plus and minus on the shift paddles, which looks even cooler. I really like how these look. And behind the shift paddles, they put in these like ridges, and they just feel very nice to press, and it makes it so that every time you upshift or downshift, it's a great feeling, although it's not quite as rewarding as driving a car with a manual transmission, at least in my opinion. And next up, another difference between this car and the M3 that I reviewed is a feature called M-Drive Professional. It is an option you can get in the infotainment system, and it includes lap timing, but also a drift analyzer, which from what I read is exactly what you'd think. You do a drift, and then I guess it like analyzes how good it was or how far it went. And to me, this seems like something you would get bonus points for in a video game, like good drift plus 10,000 or something. But here it is in a real life car situation. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate this feature because this M4 doesn't have the M-Drive Professional option, but I'm told it's available on all the M4 models, so the M4 and the M4 Competition, but it isn't offered on the M3. Still, that sounds like a pretty cool feature to try out if you do a lot of drifting in your brand new $80,000 BMW. And by the way, one last quirk. In my review of the new M3, I was playing around with the infotainment system, and I noticed that on the camera system, the car shown was the exact same color as the car I was sitting in. And I was wondering, you know, did they actually make sure the car in the picture is the same color as the actual car you're driving? Well, in case you were curious about that too, here's the camera system of the M4 Competition, same color. So apparently they do actually match the color of the car in the camera system to the color of your own car, rather than just using a generic image. And that really is pretty cool attention to detail. I love to see little quirks like that one. And speaking of M4 changes compared to the M3, this is a coupe, of course, a two-door car, and that means rear seat access is far more difficult than in the M3, and so I will climb into the rear seat now, as I always do. To get back here, you fold the seat forward, and then it automatically goes forward. You have to wait and wait and wait for that to happen. Keep waiting, keep waiting. They really don't expect a lot of people to use this feature given how long it takes for the seat to go forward. But anyway, eventually it makes it forward and you just kind of climb yourself in. Oh, and sit down. Now, interestingly, you have a climate zone back here, which is really surprising me because you're not really going to be putting people in the back that often. If you wanted to do that, you would have gotten an M3, but there's still climate controls back here and even charge ports for rear passengers. The only other interesting thing in the back seat is the seat belts, which have the M colors stitched into them. I love how that looks, very cool. The front seats have it, and the back seats do too, which is a nice little touch considering they'll probably never really be used all that much. And by the way, as I sit in the back seat with very little headroom, I am reminded that there used to be an M4 convertible, but that's not out yet on the new body style. BMW hasn't even announced they're going to make a new M4 convertible, but I assume it's going to be on the way soon, but it's not here yet. Right now, just the coupe M4 and the M3 sedan. All right, here goes the new M4, literally back to back with the new M3. I just drove the M3, and it'll be an interesting comparison because that was a base model with a manual, and this is the Competition, so it has an automatic, and obviously it's also the coupe. Man, effortless speed, effortless speed. Fantastically quick, and the transmission is so unbelievably smooth, just incredibly so. For some reason, I feel like both this and the M3 are just way sharper than the predecessor, the car that's ending. That was a good car for sure, but this just already, you can tell, it just feels more immediate. It feels more like a performance car, I guess really does. The steering and handling just feels quicker. It feels less weighty too, even though I know it is physically heavier. They've made it so that it feels less heavy. Sitting in the car and not going anywhere, it is kind of interesting. It just feels so luxury car. You don't hear anything outside in the world. It is surprisingly nice and luxurious in here. You know, you pay this much money, I guess you expect a lot of luxury to go on with your sport, and you certainly get that with this car. I'm a big believer in performance cars that are also practical, okay? The coupe feels maybe a little bit sharper than the sedan, but we're not talking about an enormous amount here, and not even all that noticeably large. To me, the sedan is the way to go with this car. I gotta say, I just put it in top gear and I'm just kind of cruising now, and it's reasonably, it's quiet. I wouldn't call it comfortable by any means. The suspension is definitely, you know, going over those little lane bumps, you probably hear them, and you can feel it. You can really feel it, although I do have it all in like M Sport drive mode. All right, pop on the on-ramp here. I can give it a little gas. I don't want to go too high in the range. All right, here we go. Whew. Man, it just feels so quick. And it really is effortless and excellent performance. You know, I have to say, I mentioned this with the sedan already, this car does not want for torque. And I was really concerned that it would. Previous M3 models have been peaky. You have to go high in the rev range in order to get power from them. This car does not have a huge torque figure, and so I was a little concerned that would happen here too. It is not happening. This car is quick at all speeds, and you get a lot of performance even if you're just at 2,000, 3,000 RPM and you accelerate. It just feels really strong. I have to say though, it's just really clear to me, driving these two cars back to back, it's just really clear to me. You want a manual transmission. I love the competition, and I like the idea of it, and 30 more horsepower is nice, and a lot more torque is nice to have. And this car definitely does feel a little bit faster than the regular one. But I've never really cared about the precise top speed, acceleration numbers, whatever. I care more about enjoying the car and having a lot of fun in the car, and I think you just have more fun with the manual, especially a manual as good as the one that I just drove in the M3. It's fantastically fun to use. This almost makes it too easy. Point and shoot, anybody can do this, and you get kind of complacent. With that said, of course, the car is still tremendously fun and just amazingly enjoyable to drive. The steering precision is just so impressive. Really incredible, actually, to use. I'm really surprised, especially considering it's not that small of a car, but you can just point and shoot it so easily and so quickly. I do think that the manual is more fun, but there's so much about this car that is great. I don't know, I liked the outgoing M3 and M4. I think they were nice, but I always felt they felt a little big. They drove a little big. This car feels like I want an M3 to feel, or an M4 now they call it. I mean, it feels a little bit more precise. It feels a little quicker, sportier, sharper, and that is kind of what I'm looking for in this car. And it delivers it, along with a lot of other great stuff like great tech and some cool new features and nice materials and blah, blah, blah. It's just difficult to go wrong with this car, especially in a world where just recently they announced the next AMG C63 is going to be a 4-cylinder with a hybrid component, blah, blah, blah. This may be one of the swan songs, the last time you can get like a big fully gas engine with 3 pedals in a car like this. And so it's pretty cool to experience it. And so that's the new BMW M4 Competition. I think enthusiasts will be pleased by this car. It has a huge grille, but it also has a lot more than that. Great steering and handling, excellent power, great technology, good styling. There's a lot to like about this car, and I think it's an excellent new model in the M3 M4 lineage. Anyway, now it's time to give the new M4 Competition a DOUGSCORE. And the DOUGSCORE is here. The M4 Competition does well, but it doesn't get as high as the new BMW M3 with the manual transmission, which I recently reviewed. The M4 is faster, sure, but I didn't feel dramatically better handling, and most people won't either during normal driving. And the M4 Competition is less engaging than the M3 thanks to the automatic, and it's less practical. I think the new M3 and M4 are both fantastic cars, but I would skip the competition models and go for 3 pedals.